Hey there, it's Carla. I am so excited today because I have some magical history to share with you. Have you heard about that witch bottle that was recently found in Williamsburg, Virginia? Well, I want to give you a little more context behind that. So the Virginia Department of Transportation was preparing to widen their interstate. But before they started the work, they had a deal with the William and Mary Center for Archaeological Research to have an archaeological dig there first before they tore everything up. So one of the things that they found, one of the artifacts was a bottle with nails in it, and a couple of the members of the archaeological team believed that it could be a witch bottle, which was very exciting. So they thought that it was a witch bottle that might have been placed by a Civil War soldier or officer. But I had to study the historical context because I wanted to know who put it there, how did it get there. And after doing some more research, I believe that it is a hoodoo spell bottle placed by African-American runaway slaves. So in today's episode, I'm going to share my research and I'm going to give a tutorial on how a hoodoo spell bottle is made. So first, I'll give you a little bit of the historical context. So at the beginning of the Civil War, Confederate General Robert E. Lee, he gave the order for forts to be built in Williamsburg, Virginia. Now, these forts were to protect Richmond, Virginia, which was not only the capital of Virginia, but the capital of the Confederacy. So this is a really important placement. So now the spell bottle, the witch bottle that they found, it was found in one of these forts. It was Redoubt number 9. So there were 14 forts in all. And the big one, the mother fort, was Fort Magruder, and the 13 other satellite fortifications were known as redoubts, and they were there to support Fort Magruder. So the spell bottle was found at Redoubt number 9. So I first was looking through my research to figure out, okay, how to get there. So my first thought was, maybe it was because I'd heard about spell bottles being found in United Kingdom. I thought, okay, maybe it was Irish Americans who had reached here from Ireland right at the beginning of the Civil War, and they got off the boat and went straight into the Civil War to fight because there was a lot of money to be made. And there was also a possibility of Pennsylvania, because the bottle that was found said Chasgrove of Columbia, Pennsylvania, which meant that the bottle itself was from Pennsylvania. So the Virginia archaeologists were thinking that, okay, well, maybe the bottle came from a soldier from Pennsylvania. Now, I know that there is the Pennsylvania Dutch magical tradition, so I thought, well, maybe it could be there. So maybe it could have come from there. So I did, my research to try to figure out all these different places and these different magical traditions where it could come from. But my research went on a different turn when I started asking the question, who built the forts? Who built those actual forts where the bottle was found? Now, this blew my mind, and I'll tell you why. The first thing that I learned was that the Confederate soldiers of the South didn't like physical labor. And I suppose it shouldn't be no surprise because they had slaves. They were used to slave labor. The South was filled with cotton plantations and thousands upon thousands of slaves who did physical work. So the Confederate soldiers they felt that this kind of physical labor was beneath them. So although Robert E. Lee gave the order to start work on those forts in May 1861, nothing really happened by June 1861, a month later. Therefore, the call came out to bring the slaves to war. And they had the slaves build the entrenchments. And I was like, really? So all of that work, all of those forts, all 14 of those forts were built using slave labor. So that also opened up a whole bunch of other things for me. Now, the thing I learned, then they had this thing called impressment. So Fort Magruder, as I said, was the mother fort, and it was named after General Magruder. He kept asking the South, or telling the South, to give up their slaves for this war effort. And he did this thing called impressment, meaning, you know, this is a time of war, therefore I am impressing upon you the need for you to give us your food supplies and your slaves. And there were over like 20,000 slaves who had been brought to the war to do this kind of work for them. And another thing that was part of this impressment, that means free black men. Even though they had been free, they were also under, they had to show up and build these forts under severe penalty. And in those days, severe penalty means whipping. That means whippings. If you didn't show up to do the work, if they thought you were lazy or they thought you weren't doing your job, they would whip you. Because as we know, that was everyday kind of punishment for enslaved African Americans. So, long story short, enslaved Africans built those entrenchments, built those fortifications. So while running away is one method of resistance that slaves had, you know, in their disposal, performing hoodoo folk magic was another. So if you know anything about hoodoo magic, it's an African American tradition, and it's built from oppression. It's built from by any means necessary. It's built by, I have to do what it is that I have to do in order to survive. So it's no surprise to me at all that hoodoo would be used as another tool from slaves to escape their oppressors. So now that I explained all that to you, I'm gonna show you how one is made. So as I said earlier, the bottle that had been discovered, the name of the bottler was Chas Grove from Columbia, Pennsylvania. And I said before, I doubt that a Pennsylvania soldier brought it to the war, brought it to Virginia all the way from home, because that bottle could have come from anywhere. There were no sanitation workers, well, except for the slaves. So there was no way that there's no way that you could really say that that person brought it from home. There was going to be bottles, foodstuffs, all kind of different things that have been discarded around the war, around these different battle zones. So the bottle could go from anywhere. So here's a bottle that I recently ordered via eBay, and you can't really see the markings on it, but it says H. Grone, Grone and Company. And it was bottled in St. Louis, Missouri. So this is an 1860-ish bottle, and it's kind of heavy too. And that's the other thing. This was like maybe for soda, so it's not like there was so even if I can only imagine if it had a liquid in it, it would be extra heavy. So this is just an example of one of these old Civil War era bottles. So it looks something like this. It was a little larger, but it was the same kind of idea. So now the nails in that bottle were large, but also because I have a smaller bottle, I have a smaller hole at the top here. So what I did, I contacted one of my friends, Tom Hunt, shout out to Tom Hunt, who is a historic blacksmith, and he provided Civil War era nails for me. So we have some big ones, have some smaller ones. This is really cool. Now, if you're also wondering where the nails could have come from, there was the Tredegar Iron Works, which is like a historic ironwork manufacturer in Richmond, and it employed a large number of slaves and free blacks. So there would have been no problem for black people to get nails. So to make that hoodoo spell bottle, you would take the bottle and you'd put nails. you put sharp nails. And in Hoodoo, they're usually an odd number, but I'm just gonna put everything I have in here. Because iron is a magical substance, by the way. And the other thing, in the witch bottle that was found, the nails had actually corroded together. So yeah, so anyway, that's just an interesting point. But again, it had broken at the top. So I imagine once it was open to the elements, these kind of things could happen. Now the other thing, the next thing they would do is put urine in it, urine or hair. So I'll show you what I'll do. There's some liquid here. All right, so I'm putting more. Okay, I think that's enough. By the way, this isn't urine. It's turmeric juice from my husband, but I gotcha. But it just gives you an idea. All right, so then you'd fill the bottle with nails or sharp objects, urine, cork that baby up. Ta-da! And this could be a voodoo spell bottle. Now you also have to keep in mind that many slaves didn't read or write, so the things that might be incorporated within a current, like a modern day spell bottle, like including like writing a petition or writing your intention, that might not have been possible. But really, intention is everything. So the thing I want to make the difference between a witch bottle and a hoodoo spell bottle is this. Now, among the earliest glass bottles, the witch bottles that were found in Europe from around the 1600s, they contained urine and sharp objects such as pins and bent nails. And the whole idea about that was that it was to protect against witchcraft and evil spirits, because people were very against witchcraft. They were afraid of witchcraft. So say around the time of Halloween, a homeowner might create a witch bottle and put it near their hearth, for example, or somewhere in their home, because the idea was that there would be a magical link created by having the hair and the urine inside the bottle. And so an evil spirit would be confused and go to the bottle and get trapped in there and avoid the people who lived in the home. So that idea was, this was just to, a witch bottle was used just to protect from evil spirits, not from the war, not from the enemy, from actual magical spirits. Because at that time, there was a huge anti-witchcraft sentiment. Everyone was afraid of witches. No one wanted witches around. So witch bottles were used to protect themselves from witchcraft and evil spirits and negative energies from magical beings. Now, a hoodoo spell bottle is a different tradition in that it incorporates African foot track magic. And what that means is, after you create the bottle, the intended persons are symbolically poisoned through their feet. So for example, a hoodoo spell bottle would be buried underneath the doorstep of a home or an entrance of some kind of building. And when the person or persons walked over it, they were symbolically poisoned. So that is how I know that it's different. It's a different intention, because what happened at the readouts, those fortifications, was that the Union ended up taking over some of those fortifications. They ended up taking over the fort where that hoodoo spell bottle was found. So the job that was meant for the hoodoo spell bottle was for slaves to gain power over their masters. It was for them to be able to overturn what was going on with them. Slaves knew that the Civil War meant that their freedom was at stake, and slaves wanted to do whatever it is that they could in their own, for their own power to be free and to not be oppressed anymore. So by placing a hoodoo spell bottle at the fort, they were trying to ensure that when the Union came, or when the people came to save them or came to fight their masters, they wanted to give the North an added boost of help, of spiritual help, in order to win that war. So the funny thing about this hoodoo spell bottle that I love is that here it is. It's like over 100 years old, and those who are looking at this war. So there was a Battle of Williamsburg actually that happened there. There was a Battle of Williamsburg, also known as the Battle of Fort Magruder, which where all of this was going on, and there was a lot of help that was given by runaway slaves. Runaway slaves escaped to the North. Runaway slaves gave military information, intelligence to the North. So they were doing everything that they could to create an advantage. And when the archaeologists went back to look at the story, the archaeological story that was told by the artifacts that were left over, they said, well, there wasn't a lot of gunfire. There wasn't much stuff found. So we don't think a lot of stuff happened here at this particular readout, at this particular fort. And my theory about that is because the hoodoo spell bottle worked. It worked because even to this day, the site of where they found the bottle, it escaped a lot of machine churn. It ended up being covered by a median. Not a lot of stuff happened there, and I feel like it's because this hoodoo spell bottle had been protecting that space. So, and also a lot of slaves ran away during this time. They were able to leave their homes, They were able to leave their masters for good. They were able to go to the North and become free. They were able to, they were also left behind by Virginia slave owners who, when they saw the North coming, they just abandoned them. So there was a lot of magic, I feel, that was successful in that runaway slaves were able to get a lot done. So while the Battle of Williamsburg seems to be inconclusive, as far as history is concerned between, the North and the South, I feel that the runaway slaves, they're the ones who won that particular battle. And I believe that their hoodoo spell bottle was the reason. So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope that you enjoy this. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks.